Okay, so get this, right. South Korea,
Hmm.
democracy, K-pop, Samsung, all that, suddenly under martial law for 6 hours.
6 hours.
Yeah, wild, huh? We're diving deep into this like a total political thriller. We're using this report from the Associated Press by Foster Klug. He's a journalist based in Tokyo.
Okay, got it.
Just try to picture it. Like 1 minute, everything's normal, then bam, troops surrounding the Parliament building.
Well, yeah, that's pretty intense. It's almost hard to imagine. South Korea, you think of it as this super modern democratic country in Asia,
Right.
and then suddenly something like this happens. It's like, whoa, a total blast from the past. I mean, it really shows you how unpredictable things can be, even in places you think are stable.
It's like straight out of a movie or something.
Totally.
So we have President Yoon Suk Yeol, right? He just drops this martial law declaration. Then, boom, troops are deployed. They're putting barricades around the Parliament building. And at the same time, all this talk of a plot to overthrow the government is going around. And of course, everyone's pointing fingers at North Korea.
Yeah, talk about adding fuel to the fire. And, the timeline here, it's super important. This all happened so fast. Like, it was just bam, bam, bam. It all adds to the feeling of chaos, like,
Right.
what's going on? Nobody knows what's going to happen next.
It really was like a powder keg. So let's break it down step by step. First, we have Yoon's announcement, totally out of the blue. Then the military jumps right into action. They're at all the important government buildings. And while that's happening, these accusations of an anti-state plot start coming out.
Right, and they're saying it's linked to North Korea.
Exactly.
Which, let me tell you, in South Korea, that carries a lot of weight. It's a country that's been dealing with this conflict, this ideological divide, for decades. You know what I mean? So when you throw out accusations like that, especially without any solid evidence, people are going to be suspicious.
It's a big deal, for sure. And that's exactly what happened. Yoon claimed that the opposition was involved in these anti-state activities, that they were trying to start a rebellion, and maybe even working with North Korea.
Yeah, huge accusations.
Huge! And it sent shockwaves through the country. The thing is, he didn't offer any proof, like zero concrete evidence to back up these really serious claims.
Yeah, and that's what made a lot of people, both inside and outside South Korea, really skeptical. You have to remember South Korea's history, right? With authoritarian leaders like Park Chung-hee and Shin Do-won.
Oh yeah, they definitely used the North Korea threat to their advantage, didn't they?
All the time. They'd use it to silence anyone who disagreed with them and hold on to their power. So when Yoon starts using this kind of language without any proof, it makes people think, hold on, haven't we seen this before?
It's like he's pulling out the same old playbook.
Exactly. It brings back all these memories of a past that South Korea has worked so hard to move on from, and naturally the opposition, they were not having it.
They were not happy.
Not at all. They came out swinging.
Yeah, Lee Jae-young, the opposition leader, he straight up called it illegal and unconstitutional.
Right, and it wasn't just the opposition either. Even some people from Yoon's own party were like, are you sure about this?
They were worried.
And it really goes to show how sensitive the whole issue of the military getting involved in politics is in South Korea. They fought so hard for their democracy. The thought of the military being used for political gain, it just doesn't sit right with a lot of people.
Yeah, there's this quote from Kim Dong-yeon, the governor of Gyeonggi province. He went on X, which used to be Twitter, and wrote, "The military needs to be on the side of the people no matter what. Let's stand firm against this."
Powerful words, right? It speaks volumes about how South Korea feels, remembering what they went through and how determined they are to protect their democracy. Like, we've learned our lesson, we're not going back.
It's a reminder that democracy is hard-won, But in all this craziness, one thing's for sure, things move fast. I mean, by daybreak, the parliament had voted to end the martial law declaration, and Yeon lifted it. 6 hours of intense political drama, and then, poof, gone.
I know, right? It's crazy how quickly it all unfolded. It really shows how volatile the situation was, how fragile things can be, even in a country like South Korea that seems so stable. It really makes you wonder, what was going through Yoon's head? Why did he think this was the right move?
It's a good question.
Right here.
And I think to understand that, you have to look at the bigger picture. President Yoon, he's been facing some serious challenges lately, politically speaking.
Yeah, it's been rough for him. His approval ratings have tanked, and he hasn't really been able to get anything done in Parliament because the opposition has control.
Right, exactly. It's like he's been trying to sail a ship through a hurricane and it's just not working.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then you have that influence peddling scandal with his wife, which hasn't helped.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, he's denied any wrongdoing, but still Those kinds of accusations, they stick with you. They damage your credibility.
For sure.
And they give his opponents all the ammo they need to attack him, question his leadership. Exactly. So it makes you wonder, right? Could this whole martial law thing have been like a strategic move?
It's possible, right?
Yeah.
Was it a desperate attempt to distract people from the scandals, maybe create a sense of crisis, try to rally support behind him, or even, a power grab? It's not outside the realm of possibility.
Those are some pretty heavy implications.
They are. And to really get why this is such a big deal, we need to understand the history of martial law in South Korea. It's a country that has this really complicated relationship with military power and democracy.
Yeah, you're right. Looking back at those times when South Korea wasn't a democracy is important. They had all those authoritarian leaders who weren't afraid to use martial law to keep everyone in line.
Exactly. I mean, think about Park Chung-hee. He got into power through a military coup in 1961. And then Chun Doo-won, his crackdown on those pro-democracy protests in Gwangju back in 1980. That's a dark chapter in their history for sure.
Yep.
During those times, martial law wasn't just some abstract concept. It was everyday life. Military control everywhere, tanks in the streets, soldiers on every corner, basic freedoms just gone. It's a stark contrast to the South Korea we see today.
It's hard to even imagine, honestly.
It is. And that contrast, that's exactly why the very idea of martial law is so sensitive in South Korea. It brings back all those bad memories, all that trauma and oppression. The fight for democracy, it went on for generations, and people don't want to go back to that.
So when Yoon declared martial law, even though it was only for a few hours, it was like he was stirring up all those ghosts from the past, bringing back all these fears that people thought they'd left behind.
That's a great way to put it. It's like he cracked open this door to a dark past that everyone was trying to forget. And it makes you wonder, has South Korea really moved on from that? Are the freedoms they fought so hard for really that safe?
It's a bit unsettling, to be honest.
It is. It raises questions about how far South Korea has come on its journey to becoming a truly democratic country. And it makes you worry about what could happen in the future.
And it's not just about South Korea, is it?
No, not at all. It's a trend we're seeing around the world, actually. Leaders trying to chip away at democracy, testing the limits of their power. It's a wake-up call for all of us.
Yeah, we can't be complacent. Democracy is fragile. It needs constant attention and protection. What happened in South Korea, even though it was short-lived, it's a reminder that things can change really fast.
Absolutely. It's a cautionary tale.
It really highlights how important it is to have strong institutions, a free press, an independent judiciary, all those things.
Yeah.
And of course, we need citizens who are engaged, who are willing to hold their leaders accountable. Those are the things that protect democracy.
I couldn't agree more.
And it shows that, even in places like South Korea, where democracy seems solid, things can change quickly.
Yep, it's a constant battle.
The fight for democracy, it never really ends. So, wow, we just unpacked this whole crazy situation, right? This real-life political thriller in South Korea. But I don't know about you, I still feel like we have more questions than answers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was only 6 hours, but this thing really exposed some of the cracks in South Korean politics, and it makes you think, what's next for their democracy?
That's what I keep coming back to. Like, is this just a weird blip on the radar, or is it a sign of bigger things to come? Yeah.
That's the big question, right? It's tough to say for sure what the long-term consequences will be, but I think it's safe to say that this shook things up. It revealed some vulnerabilities, sparked some anxieties, and made people wonder if South Korea is really as stable as they thought.
It's like a little crack in the surface, and everyone's kind of nervous about what might be underneath.
Exactly. And it's not just about what's happening inside South Korea either. This whole thing could have ripple effects on their relationship with North Korea, which is already a pretty tense situation.
Right, because Yoon basically accused the opposition of working with North Korea, remember? And he's been really tough on North Korea, saying that strength and deterrence are the only way to keep South Korea safe.
Right, and this whole incident, it just gives him more reason to be even tougher. He can point to this and say, see,
Yeah.
This is what we're up against. We need to be strong.
I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
But could that backfire? I mean, could all this tension make it harder to talk to North Korea, to try to find some kind of peaceful solution?
That's a real worry for sure. When you have this much mistrust and hostility, it's easy to make mistakes, to escalate the situation unintentionally. And that could make things even harder to fix.
It's like every action has a consequence. Even something that seems small, like what happened in South Korea, could have a big impact down the line.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to really dig into these things, to look at the bigger picture, not just what's happening right in front of us.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I gotta admit, I'm walking away with a little bit of a knot in my stomach. It feels like a wake-up call. Like, democracy is fragile. We can't take it for granted, even in places that seem stable.
No doubt. It reminds us that the fight for democracy, it's never really over. It takes constant work from everyone. We need to be vigilant, be active, and be willing to defend those basic freedoms that we all rely on.
Well said. I think that's a good note to end on. You know, we've spent this whole episode trying to untangle this really complex situation, looking at it from different angles and considering what it all might mean. And hopefully we've given you, our listeners, enough information and context to form your own opinions.
Right, that's the whole point. It's about sparking your curiosity,
Yeah.
getting you thinking critically, and giving you the tools to engage with the world in a more informed way.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, keep those questions in mind. What does all this tell us about democracy, not just in South Korea, but everywhere? How could this incident change the future of the Korean Peninsula? And what can we do, each of us, to protect those democratic values that are so easily taken for granted?
It's not easy to find the answers, but it's the searching that counts. Stay curious, keep exploring, keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay engaged, keep learning.